When it comes to type 2 diabetes, carbohydrates in your diet are one of the main considerations to ensure adequate glucose control. Now, if you watch any of my videos, you'll know I'm all about the long term, changing your lifestyle, getting as fit as possible, and we can then accommodate carbohydrates in our diet with relatively little consequence. However, for lots of people out there, they like to manage the carbohydrates in their diet to ensure that they're not getting spikes between meals. And some people do have a level of insulin resistance where we do need to make some individual considerations to lower the overall carbohydrate content. So in this video, we're going to explore easy solutions to lowering your carbohydrate content in your diet. Let's go. 1. Potatoes. So potatoes can be a good source of nutrition in your diet, but they do pack a modest carbohydrate punch depending on the portion that you eat. However, depending on the type of potato that you're choosing will ultimately impact how much carbohydrate you're ingesting. Add to that, we can also manipulate different foods that are from similar sources like root vegetables to provide a lower carb hit. For example, a jacket potato generally provides around 22.5 grams of carbohydrate per 100 grams, keeping in mind that a jacket potato will weigh a lot more than 100 grams. However, changing to new potatoes, we can instantly lower the carbohydrate content by a simple switch from 22.5 to around 15 grams per 100. And of course, the savings will only add up the more and more that you eat. If you want to take it one step further and perhaps you're having wedges or fries, or perhaps you're having some form of mashed potato, although that will increase the glycemic index, i.e. how quickly the food will be absorbed, ultimately it's the amount of carbohydrate that makes the biggest difference to your glucose levels. And there's another trick that we can start to use to further reduce this carbohydrate content, which will be kinder to your glucose levels. And that is using other root vegetables such as butternut squash, where the carbohydrate content comes in at a minuscule 8 grams per 100 gram. The preparation remains the same for things like mash, we're just using a slightly different root vegetable, which instantly lowers your carbohydrate content. If you want to add a bit more variety in your diet, we can take this one step further, and we could also add in things like carrots into our mash mixture, which will give us 7 grams per 100 grams. So it's a really simple way of getting additional vegetables into your diet and lowering the carbohydrate content as we do it. Number 2, rice and pasta. When it comes to the carbohydrate content for rice and pasta, they're pretty similar. It will be similar for things like cereal and oats as well, whereby they provide approximately, pasta, 60 to 80 grams per 100 grams of carbohydrate, and that's a dry weight. So if you're ever looking at a label, just be sure to check what it's presenting to you, because often these packets will present them in a cooked weight, in which case this will look something like 25 to 30 grams of carbohydrate, but that's misleading. A dry weight is about 60 to 80. I suppose once you've cooked it, a typical portion of rice or pasta would be about 180 grams without any other considerations like type 2 diabetes or lower carb diet. So I guess once you actually cook the cooked weight packet reference ranges, the overall carbohydrate in your meal will be relatively the same. But the idea is that if you're trying to look at how many carbs you're having, you want to be knowing how much you're working from in the first place. So this is a good number to know. However, we can reduce this further if we want to with some simple tricks. Using a complete replacement or a mixture by integrating some lentils, which is quite common in Asian cuisine, like in curries, we can reduce this figure from 60 to 80 to between 10 and 20 grams. Often where this becomes a problem in type 2 diabetes, particularly in patients from a South Asian origin that I see quite frequently, is they'll combine the two. So they're adding the lentils into the curry and also having the rice, and that can cause glucose levels to rise. However, if we're integrating the lentils into the rice, and then you can sort of mix it in with the sauce once you've actually cooked it, for example, actually what we're doing is we're significantly reducing the overall carb content. If you wanted to and you can tolerate it, you could use the lentils in replacement for the rice and pasta. Now obviously it's going to give you a slightly different micronutrient, vitamin and mineral mixture, but you're still getting lots of fiber, you're still getting vitamins and minerals, and you're lowering your carbohydrate content significantly, so you're not going to get as big a spike by the complete replacement. Again, we can take this one step further, either through a mixture combination of these foods, or if you want to, a like-for-like replacement, and that's using other foods that have become a bit more widely available in recent times, where we use vegetable replacements like cauliflower rice or courgette spaghetti, more commonly known as courgette. Now, when we use these, we can start to really lower the carbohydrate content, where it will be coming in at around 3 to 5 grams per 100 grams. So again, huge savings. Now, of course, keep in mind, this is only if you need to do this. If you're eating rice, pasta, potatoes, and you're not getting a glucose spike, then we don't need to worry about it. This is in the context if you want to do this, if you want to lower your carb content, or if you're struggling to control those post-meal spikes, these are some strategies that we can do. Number 3, fruits. Now, very anecdotally, a lot of my patients will rely on certain fruits that they eat as snacks throughout the day. Now, some have a higher carbohydrate content than others. Again, there's no real evidence to show that snacking on fruit causes high glucose chronically. In fact, fruits are good for us. That said, if you are finding that you're getting spikes when you do have some fruit, sometimes it's to do with the amount of fruit you're eating in one go. So actually, how many are you having together? Sometimes it might just be spreading them out throughout the day. Quick tip there. But there are some fruits with a higher carb content than others, and so we can make some changes to take the edge off if we wanted to. So when it comes to the carbohydrate content and the highest carbohydrate containing fruits, although there will be others, tend to be dried fruits, because they are concentrated sugar, providing roughly 40 grams of carbohydrate per 100 grams, and bananas, which again, like our potato friends on the first segment, give about 25 grams per 100, but the average banana will typically weigh more than 100 grams. So you might be getting around 30 grams overall in a typical banana. Just by changing this to something more like an orange or some berries, we can start to reduce that carbohydrate content per 100 grams to around 8 grams for an orange, or for berries, even lower, they tend to be somewhere around the 5 gram mark. And that's pretty much universal for most berries. Obviously, something like strawberries, which is quite a big fruit, sometimes you can overdo it, whereas smaller berries like blueberries, sometimes it's easier to regulate that portion just because they're smaller. Just again, practical consideration. But ultimately, we're looking for about a handful regardless. A portion of fruit is about 80 grams. And obviously something like a banana, which will be over 80 grams, can just pack a bit of a carbohydrate punch. So just changing it for something like this, or even like an apple, which is about 15 grams per 100, some about 12, can just make the difference between a slight increase in those glucose levels between meals, or perhaps if you're having it with your lunch or with a meal anyway, just take that edge off at the end or in between meals. So again, real simple swaps. Number 4, chocolate. Now, if you've got a sweet tooth like me, I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't cover some of our favorite treats. So chocolate, we all know that it can be quite sugary and cause high glucose levels. Often the trick with chocolate isn't necessarily cutting it out altogether. Obviously, if you can do that, then it's probably better for the glucose levels, but we're all human. We all want a bit of a treat now and again. So when it comes to integrating them into our diet, there's no real trick involved, but it's more about the portion and the frequency that they feature in our diets. For example, if you're someone that has a dessert once a year and that's it, then we know that the other 364 days a year, chocolate or dessert is not affecting your glucose levels. So on average, that effect isn't particularly high. As opposed to someone that's having it daily, that's going to affect their levels much more compared to the person A, or compared to the first person. If you're someone that needs a little sweetness every day, then really we're starting to think about the portion or the frequency that you're having them in your diet. Perhaps you could have them maybe 3 or 4 times a week, but only aiming for a very small amount. And of course, always relate this back to the glucose levels that you're getting. If you're testing, you can soon see the immediate impact, but really we want to relate it back to that HbA1c result that you get at your GPs or your time in target that you might have on a flash or continuous glucose monitor. Because ultimately, even if you get a spike, if your overall control is still good, then it's not having a huge impact on your overall health and glucose levels. If you're finding that your glucose levels are high on average with either of those tests, and you know you're having a lot of these foods, then that might be the first obvious thing to address and look at in order to start reducing the glucose levels on the whole. And there you have it, guys. 4 of my top tips for lowering your carbohydrate content in your diet if you need to, or if you so want to. Remember, if you found this content useful, hit the like and subscribe buttons. And if you want to know when we post new content, hit the notification bell. We also offer consultancy services where we'll work one-to-one with you to get you towards the goals and targets that you want to reach. Check out diabetesdietguide.com for our consultancy services if you're interested. At the time of filming, we're just between websites, but we should be up and running again ASAP. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you later.